I'm not advocating for keeping everything completely high level, but yeah, I like tutorials that are not too long, but they don't have to be brief and extremely brief and concise. Even if they repeat something I already know, if you don't have a feeling they waste your time because you have to wait through all this stuff, then that's fine.
Can I maybe ask Mika and Anne, because you've both had a course in Helsinki, which actually used to some extent the pencil code, is that right?
Yeah.
Can you say a few words about that, how that actually worked and or not worked?
Well, I still haven't done this, this exercise programming thing
It's
because
an
my
exercise,
sample
really.
isn't working.
What?
My sample isn't working.
Uh-huh.
But never mind that. I don't know. This sounds very good. An example of how to add physical things to the sample you're using. Because now I don't have a clue where to start. Now I do actually. This has been very enlightening.
Mm-hmm.
This very talk here.
Mm-hmm.
I go, oh, I see. Yeah, it's obvious now that I see it's happening. So yeah, there it is. Wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
But you want to know about the course. It actually wasn't a course. This is how you use the pencil code. This is how you do numerical MHD. And the way we started using pencil code on this course was, okay, here is a short list of the things you have to do to be able to use pencil code, and then read the manual. This was basically it. Ask me if there's some problems, and of course there were problems, but it wasn't a very good tutorial how to use the pencil code.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
You have anything to add? This is how I experienced it.
Well, I think I learned some basics of using pencil code, but well, now that I have started my own research, it's I encounter all kinds of different kind of problems because I just don't know about the code enough.
Mm.
And we all of us mostly just used ready-made samples.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I'm not sure about everyone, but
Yeah, it was quite.
yeah, we didn't tamper the code much.
Yes.
Just produced some results of our own, so to speak.
So if setting up a new problem consists of maybe 3 pieces altogether, the first piece has to do with what are the equations that you want to solve. So they either exist or they don't exist. Hopefully, otherwise if you start at first instance with something that doesn't exist perhaps. So that's the first issue. The equation must be known and must be there in the code. The next thing is the initial condition.
Yeah.
So you must know what do you want as an initial condition. So most of the time, obviously there's just so many different initial conditions, and there's many initial conditions already in the code, of course. And very often, of course, your particular one is still not really in the code.
Right.
But if you look in the code, there's each module has a section about initial conditions. And you see already that each has probably already some 50 examples. And of course yours will be probably the 51st example then. And you know how to add this. I mean, this must be a new addition. We cannot expect that this already exists, of course. And then the next step would be to run the start. And then, of course, you have to look. And that's, I think, an important point that we stressed in the manual. You actually have to visualize what you're doing. And then I think one of the first problems is that people say, oh, I'm not using IDL, I'm using GNU plot, for example. And I have not seen anybody who can actually get very far with GNU plot. Yes, that's one problem. The other problem...
you can't.
It's nice. It's nice for simple time series, and Anders this season you wrote a script that uses that.
And this, of course, that really makes you completely blind. You're just looking along a very narrow pipe only if you're doing just a time series. You need to look at the volume, of course, what you're doing. Otherwise, anything can happen, and you have no clue, of course. So you need really, and of course, everything is ready in IDL. And IDL is unfortunately a very expensive language, and I don't know what to recommend about this, but
that's why we should translate all our
also a
ideas.
problem with the IDL scripts. I mean, there's a huge number of oddly named IDL scripts that come with the code.
yes.
And there's, for most of them, there's nothing in the manual.
Right.
Which is never going to change because I mean
So
those
then you wonder why
scripts,
do we get all these?
those
scripts?
scripts should have descriptive headers. That's the problem. Many of them don't have those. But there's no way of tracking what all these IDL scripts do in the manual. I mean that's just
Maybe Anders does not agree.
That's
What do you think?
That's something I think is or in the manual, but there seem to be a lot of scripts that are not very general in the ideal directory, and maybe they should not have such a prominent position that you find them immediately from the point into this ideal. That would be my opinion.
Sure,
I think it's fine that they're there. I think the problem is that they are just in your face when you ls the ideal directory like.
Well, the other issue too is that a lot of the information that you might put into the manual might be actually better served sitting on the wiki. Like the FAQ and some things like this, they might actually you really don't need them in the manual. The manual is just how the code works, and the wiki is for getting started and getting familiar with it. Or the stuff about having lists of instead of putting a listing of all the IDL scripts in the manual, that's what you have on the wiki. You have a page for IDL scripts and a one-liner description of what they do. Graphed out of headers that people wrote in.
Oh, that's not right. But we should always think about manpower.
Yeah.
This brings us, of course, to the question of what should be in the wiki and what should be in the manual. I mean, the advantage of having it on the wiki, of course, would be that then a number of other users can more easily add something exactly to the section.
But that also means that the wiki will be a jumble of styles and will become slowly incomprehensible. So we should periodically move things from the wiki to the manual and make them systematic.
so that only the manual becomes incomprehensible.
No.
So the wiki would be a buffer then, or? I mean, we did already discuss on the first day that wiki would be something like a temporary thing, or some short-term solution to things.
That's very good.
For some stuff, yes, but I mean, that's not normally how wikis work.
No.
And wikis have all different styles and everything. I think it's the question whether the wiki becomes incomprehensible or not is the question of organizing the wiki, and we should make sure that the structure is clear. And if the hierarchy of the entries makes sense, then people can add entries in a very anarchical fashion, and it still makes sense.
Yes, that's right.
But I mean, classically, a wiki would be stuff contributed by everybody who is not a core coder of the pencil code, and the manual would be our task. But there's probably borderline cases, and all of a sudden, most of the developers will say, "Oh, I'm not a core developer, so I'd rather write on the wiki or whatever." It's not so well defined. But
I think that doesn't have. I don't see why that must be particularly good practice. I mean, it's good to have things in the manual, of course, but using the wiki as a core developer is perfectly fine for lots of things.
I think it also changes the perception of the wiki. If you feel that stuff on the wiki has been contributed by people at your level, you're more likely to think that you can understand this. I may be wrong, but and you're probably more likely to also contribute yourself. And then if that really works, if there is a community that maintains the wiki, then the core developers can still correct stuff there or add some stuff that they feel right now doesn't fit into the manual. But that's my notion of how wikis and manuals work together in many cases. That's just one scenario, obviously.
Wikis cannot be printed out so with a correspondingly good quality. That's, I think, a problem. The wikis are really meant to be read from the screen. Do you all agree? But if you print, I don't think you get the pictures. You do, but it looks very strange sometimes.
It depends on the wiki,
some,
I think,
on some browsers.
But it rarely looks as solidly good as a manual.
So, for example, I printed our Nordita news, for example, on the wiki. So I print them out. I believe everybody sees it like this. And then I come to Copenhagen, and my secretary there says, "Oh, it's not working. She has been bothered about this for more than half a year. No, she didn't tell anybody. If she prints it, she only gets the characters of the first line. Completely crazy." So if you have strange browsers, everything else is maybe okay, but for printing our wiki, it fails. So it's much better if I have something which can turn our wiki into a PDF file also, for printing purposes only. And that can that be done? We can, of course, provide it by hand, right? About IDL, one more comment. I mean, Wolfgang and I, when we started with this, we thought that the IDL stuff is a bit of an outside of the actual pencil code. Clearly, at first sight, is. The only reason why it's not is because I'm emphasizing that it's just so important to look what you're doing. But on the other hand, it is a bit of a restriction in somebody's freedom. If somebody likes to look at things using certain other routines or certain other graphics packages, and there are so many on the market, of course, there's no reason for us to restrict them to using only IDL. The only reason why IDL is really the best is because there exists a lot of material now. So people are saying they can also do everything that IDL can in MATLAB. I've had many people who started, for example, with MATLAB, and Niels Haugen, for example, started with MATLAB. He said, IDL is just crazy, it's so expensive, and MATLAB is the same. And then I told him, yes, that's no problem. That's no problem for me. So he can, because MATLAB is supported by university licenses much more frequently. So then, and I told many people that then, in that case, they can actually start MATLAB using MATLAB and do it all themselves. And then it took maybe just a few days until they came back and they all started using IDL, because nobody ever wrote an interface. I mean, we had so many people. The majority of all the newcomers are all MATLAB users, and still nobody ever dared to write anything useful that they corresponded back to us. Not a single piece, actually.
Which doesn't say anything about MATLAB versus IDL. It just says something about working with the tools that are provided or
Yes.
doing your own stuff. I think we should provide the basic tools to read the data from the pencil code in MATLAB or OK. There is this one student in Calgary who has at least part of this, and in principle we can do it ourselves. I mean, I've never used MATLAB, but I've used Octave, and it's the same language, and once it runs in Octave, it's not difficult to get that running in MATLAB. From our side, there probably never will be much fancy stuff, but then if one or two of these people who would prefer to use MATLAB then really can get started with it, maybe we get contributions in that respect. And as we already discussed, numeric Python or scientific Python would also be a platform that
this would
many
be
are
one of the most
interested
one of the most promising things, being that it's extremely well documented and a big community.
It's very big community.
And it's free and it's very versatile. And therefore, she already translated most of the PC read things to Python.
Who did this?
Jeff.
Uh-huh.
Although I wouldn't expect many systems to actually have everything you need for scientific Python.
Yeah, I would have to
installed.
admit, I had problems installing this scientific Python.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just a Linux idiot. I know that I am.
So if he has all this stuff,
Scientific Python is the older version. You should go to numerical Python.
But I didn't.
No,
I
we need SciPy, and SciPy is the supersedes NumPy. These are the new.
I thought it's the other way around. Okay.
NumPy is part of SciPy, I believe, and SciPy also includes, plotting stuff. If I could get to the right of the screen, I could do many more things than I'm able to now. But,
sorry.
Well, I think it would be good if there's some open source language of development language that we had just for reading data. Come on, that's what you mean.
And I mean, if you code stuff for Python, I have to do it for PDL as well.
What's that?
PDL, for data language.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, but that's not. Now let's see when it comes to automatic.
So the message, well, the one conclusion is that we fully Jeff into submitting and stuff.
Yeah, I don't really but I think now he has to wait until SVN until we change to SVN because he likes SVN and then he will feel more comfortable. So yes.
So he's giving the pressure back.
Yes.
On different levels.
Let's change the screen size.
And then I think again, once I get to restructure the RDN directory, my guess is that it will turn out that there's only really 5 or 10 files that are really important. Presumably, even though there are 500 files there.
We could have tried. We never tried that.
Okay, and I will
outside this.
look at MATLAB and obtain that. And then there's a student in Calgary who did some of the stuff for MATLAB. And that would be useful to build on that.
So SciPy, for instance, also includes matplotlib, which is pretty nice, I think. It's especially nice for producing publication quality plots and figures.
So what's your opinion about this relative to ideal?
For instance, that it has proper LaTeX support. That's actually very nice.
And I'll do PDF file directly?
Yeah, everything.
So if you're saying
that I'm not sure about, but you can always use EPS to PDF.
So Anders, if you're saying Jeff actually has all that, have you seen those routines, or are you working with those routines also? Or?
I'm not. He showed me once, and it looked impressive, even though I had a couple of years with that.
But would he have an interest in distributing this somehow, or what's the idea?
Yeah, that's the idea.
So if
he just had his defense and a long summer vacation. That's the reason he didn't do it.
I mean, certainly as far as we are concerned, it's a great thing if he puts that into these directories.
Okay.
I mean, there's an existed ATX directory, there exists an IDL directory.
Have a Python directory.
Yeah, right. And still there's an
Does
existing
anyone
MATLAB.
use DX?
Oh, by the way, what about all these other there are 3 major 3D visualization tools other than DX, I think, which are Data, of course, and then there is Visit and ParaView. And maybe, I don't know, if we have the time, it would be nice to have import service. Because, I mean, alternatively, because I try to get my data